Y'all know what I wished I'd had in college? The coolest bro you can imagine. A smoking hot redhead. An apartment that, at the touch of a button, would pop out super science gadgetry that let me do all kinds of crazy stuff. And, oh yeah, superpowers. Hey there, everyone. It's Saturday, and that means it's time for Super Saturday, the show where we discuss all things super and awesome. And today, we're swinging into some super stuff with a show I grew up on back in 81 through 83 and then rediscovered in the late 80s as they started with the reruns. Today, we're going to revisit Spider Man and his amazing friends.
Spider-Man and his amazing friends, Iceman and Firestar.
Oh, that intro just gets me every freaking time. I feel like I'm teeny tiny again, sitting in front of the TV playing with some action figures. But I digress. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was an animated series put out by Marvel Productions, a long precursor to what we now have at the House of Mouse. Mostly, except for the parts that aren't. But that's a video for another day. This show was more or less a crossover from the 81 Spider Man cartoon, except this time Spidey had some compatriots in his life of daring do. First was his pal Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, one of the founding members of the X-Men, now freelancing out in the world with his bud Peter Parker. How are they buds? Who knows? It's not important. Now, Bobby, as many of you know, is a mutant, and mutants were kind of a taboo thing there for a while. One might assert a person being a mutant was an analogy for all kinds of hardships folks face in society, including, but not limited to, race, religion, etc. So, this was kind of a daring inclusion for the time. And Marvel swung even further for the fences with the inclusion of the smoking hot Angelica Jones, aka Firestar, who was also a mutant. It's scandalous. The show ran a total of 24 episodes over 3 seasons, each episode clocking in at roughly 25 minutes. This was your standard half hour cartoon show plugged into a variety of slots where there was availability and need. NBC was attempting to duplicate some of that sweet success ABC had enjoyed with all their various Super Friends incarnations. And yes, there's a video coming out there in the future, but let me tell you, the Super Friends had one of, if not the, most convoluted runs I have ever seen in a show. So that's going to be some research. Anywho. But this is also where we got the dog, Miss Lion. The pooch was a pretty obvious attempt to compete with Wonder Dog and Gleek. But getting back on track, Firestar was originally supposed to be the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. However, just as in the FF cartoon from '78, which I will undoubtedly cover at some point, legal issues arose and the idea to include Johnny Storm was scrapped. This was for the best. We all loved Johnny, but we really loved Angelica. So much so, some of us may have ran out and found ourselves our own fiery haired beauty to shack up with. Maybe. Marvel was able to maintain creative control over the series, always important in keeping the lore and superhero identities consistent. Stan Lee himself lent a hand with screenwriters, casting, and even the animation. The sound effects, well, some at least, were reused assets you might recognize from Battlestar Galactica as well as Buck Rogers. Nothing at all wrong with that. Those laser blasts were tip top. According to Firestar voice actress Kathy Garver, the show was pretty simple. They had a storyboard, they'd do a roundtable reading of the script to get a feel for the show, and then they just go record. No need for a lot of extra steps here, and production was streamlined because of it. During the first season, the show ran with a cold open, a technique writers might recognize as in media res, in the middle of things. You jump right into the action without explanation or narration, just boom, go. Later, the series would shuffle this opening sequence into the show proper after running the intro. The second season saw a change in this, as the show was smashed in with the Incredible Hulk cartoon, becoming a Frankenstein's monster called the Incredible Hulk and the Amazing Spider-Man. The shows even shared an intro. The show got Stan Lee to create an opening narration, something they actually went back and added to the first season in the reruns. They flopped the billing for the third season, now referred to as The Amazing Spider-Man and The Incredible Hulk. And this is the billing they stuck with into the late 80s with their reruns. However, the narrations by Stan Lee started becoming sporadic, so that after 86 you weren't sure if you were going to get Stan the Man or not, and they haven't aired since. In addition to Firestar, the show created a couple of other notable original characters. First was Empire State University's resident archaeologist adventurer, Indiana. That's not right. He's Hiawatha Smith, and he uses a boomerang instead of a whip. See, he's completely different. You might be unsurprised to learn the character was created by producer and story editor Dennis Marks, who admitted the character was based largely on Indiana Jones. However, this professor can talk to animals. Also, we had Bobby Drake's half sister, Aurora Dante. Yes, that's her actual name. However, she's also known as the superhero Lightwave, a mutant who could control and manipulate light, and she's totally not Dazzler. Voiced by Annie Lockhart, the character sadly only appears in the final episode. She was introduced as a villain, but it was all mind control. Rogue SHIELD agent Buzz Mason had given her the brain zap along with a quantum enhancer to increase her powers to such strength that she can actually control a satellite. How does light energy control a satellite? I'm glad you asked. Through wavy hand gestures, of course. No, seriously, it made no sense. But it's a kid's cartoon, so whatever. Lightwave regains her self-control after her half-brother is put in mortal danger and the bad guy is taken down. Her fate, however, is unknown as she vanishes along with the series never to be seen again. There's also the twin characters of Video Man, something that looks so cool and futuristic back in the early 80s. First a villain, then a hero, he's a two-dimensional being with lightning cords. He's composed by electronic data gained from video game arcades. I can't help but feel a bit sad for the guy. If he'd only been created 40-odd years later, him and Tilly Norwood could totally hit it off. Anywho, beyond the original characters created for the show, we are gifted with a list of cameos and spotlights far too numerous to simply list out here. From Captain America to the Kingpin, from Doctor Doom to Doctor Strange, from Electro to Shauna the She-Devil, the show had a lot of folks stopping by. The show premiered September 12th, 1981 with the episode Triumph of the Green Goblin written by Dennis Marks and concluded November 5th, 1983 with Mission Save the Guard Star, also penned by Marks. He was there at the beginning and he was there when the lights turned out. Dennis Marks penned 6 of the 24 episodes, barely less than Donald Gluck's 7 and barely more than Christy Marks's, no relation, 5. Sadly, the show is cripplingly expensive to obtain on physical media. And I always say, get your physical media, except when, it's just so darn expensive you can't even think about it. Prices started at around $50 and they spiked to over 100. However, the show is available on Disney Plus, where yours truly is rewatching it as we speak, so there's that. And it's a show I would earnestly recommend to anyone wanting to stroll down early 80s superhero animation, which I can't get enough of personally. But that is it for today, folks. Thank you, one and all, for tuning in, giving me a moment of your time. I appreciate you. Now, it is Saturday morning, y'all. Pop in a cartoon. Keep the tradition alive. While you're at it, maybe watch a good movie afterward. Gather around the table, roll some dice, make some memories. Make sure you drink a little water, get some exercise, and as always, have a good one.